You might get a little pop-up.
Okay. Yep.
Okay, all right.
Got it.
All right.
Now, is this something we can use later?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
So this is yours by way of Legacy School of Sports Sciences utilizing Honest Game. This is a webinar that we've created for you. It'll be educational for everyone. And then obviously you have my direct phone and email. So if there are specific questions regarding specific students, you know, that's fair game off of the Zoom and off of the recording, but definitely this is kind of the first step to launch it for you all.
Okay.
Students and families out there that will watch another day, and really just to try to educate. That's our big platform, is we really just want to educate. So
Gotcha.
without further ado, if it's okay with you, I'll just kind of get us started.
Okay.
All righty, fabulous. So you know, as we know that at the end of the day, the reason that Honest Game software was created is that we really want to take the guesswork out of being eligible to play college sports. It's so confusing. There's so many rules. There are 5 options to play in college, each with their own set of rules. And we really want to make sure that we take that burden off of the schools and the families and the parents. So this is me. I joined Honest Game after over 20 years at the college athletic space. I was formerly overseeing academics and compliance as a senior associate athletic director. And as I was explaining before, I left that life to join Honest Game because I truly, truly believe in our mission that we can educate students and families. We can take the burden off of the schools and all of the things that you have to do, and really just build this village around the student athlete in hopes that we can help them and lift them up to drive access to college, and also using that sports as a motivator. So really, at the end of the day, we can see the research shows that sports is this driver for high academic achievement, right? So some statistics here, which are pretty awesome, is that 94% of women who hold C-suite level positions are former athletes. You know, that's very, very telling that sport is such a driver for many people's success, and that also students are more likely to go to college than those that are not. But really, what's important for the families and parents and students to know is that academic eligibility is required for a lot of things, right? It doesn't matter how well you play. If you aren't academically eligible to play in college, you can't play, right? So to get a scholarship, to compete, to be accepted to some schools, to make a roster, to practice, academic eligibility is required for all of those pieces. And each institution, each college, university out there has various rules, but some of them say if they're not going to be a qualifier out of high school, then we do not accept them in terms of our admissions piece. So just a brief overview about the options of post-secondary play for students. The NAIA is a small subset of schools, 250 colleges and universities around the country. That's the smallest, ranging all the way to Division III at 348 schools, Division I, 350. Obviously, the number of student athletes at each of those levels varies very widely, right? There's a sliver of these NAIA schools, but if you really take a look, Division III student athletes comprise almost 200,000 students across the country. Division I offers the most opportunity in terms of kind of sports or types of sports, but athletic scholarships are across the board, except at Division III. But athletics can play a part in scholarship at the Division III level, just in terms of a different form, but they wouldn't call it athletics aid. And the NCAA is the first the piece that we'll talk about, and it's broken up into 3 divisions, right? So Division I, the basics floor that you need to meet would be that 2.3 NCAA core course GPA, which we'll talk about, and a 980 SAT or a 75 ACT. Division II, the requirements are a little bit less, coming down to a 2.2, and a little bit more flexibility in that SAT or ACT sum. And then the Division III level, there are not any NCAA core course requirements. And so as you see your reports, now that Legacy has the Honest Game reports, Division III will always be green. There's always an option to play sports at the Division III level once you've graduated from high school. And so you need to meet the admission standards, but everyone's always green in Division III. So what is a core course, right? We need to be counting these core courses all along the way, starting in 9th grade. And a core course has to meet a couple benchmarks. First, it must be an academic 4-year college prep course, receiving high school graduation credits in one of these areas. And so many people think, you know, math, science, social science, and English, those are the ones that are on the top of mind. but many foreign language courses count as what they call additional courses or electives, but also comparative religions and philosophies. If schools offer those types of classes, they can count as well. They have to be at or above the high school's regular academic level, and they need to be taught by a qualified instructor in your school. So what is the core GPA? What the NCAA does for divisions 1 and 2 is they take the 16 core courses that they require you to take, and they look at the grades just in those 16 core courses. They do not count pluses and minuses, and they don't count anything outside of the 16 core. So as you're looking at your reports, you will see that potentially your NCAA core course GPA is different than your school GPA. This is why. They're looking at 16 specific courses or 32 semesters. And each list has their own, each high school has their list of what's approved. And so kudos to Legacy for jumping on board with Honest Game. We really made your portal, your NCAA portal, much more robust. There's a lot of offerings that Legacy has for the student athletes. And so we want to make sure that we're choosing wisely, and that's where your reports will come in. You'll hear about the sliding scale, and there's a lot of different information out there. Right now, we're kind of in a holding pattern. For those juniors and seniors on the call, the NCAA test scores are going to be waived for you all. So you do not need an SAT or an ACT to go on to play at the Division I or Division II level for those enrolling in college this year or next year. Pardon me, right, my seniors out there I'm talking with. However, what's important to know is that the voting has not happened for everybody else. So in January, we'll be hearing from the NCAA about what test scores look like moving forward. But if it comes back, if SATs or ACTs are required, what the NCAA has is a sliding scale, right? So the higher your SAT score, the less stringent your core course GPA for those 16 courses has to be, and vice versa. If you're a great test taker, your core course GPA doesn't have to be so high. If you're not a great test taker, then you really need to earn higher grades in those 16 core courses. We broke up really what we're focusing on, right? The minute that you enter 9th grade, that's when you want to start counting your core courses. If you average 4 NCAA approved courses each year, so that adds up to 16 courses or 32 semesters, that's really important to start counting those. At the Division I level, there's a requirement called the 10-7 rule, and that's specific that they want of those 16 courses, 10 of them must be completed before the start of your senior year. And 7 of those 10 have to be in English, math, and science. So it's a huge, logarithm of information. It's definitely hard for a parent or a family to kind of say, well, where are they or which ones? And that's really where we want to make sure that Honest Games report are well-versed for you for that. Also, moving along that freshman to senior year, you really want to be looking at an SAT or an ACT again if you need it, looking where is your GPA. And sometimes students take summer school or virtual classes that are approved by the NCAA to try to boost that GPA as they move along. We want to make sure that we're registering with the Eligibility Center as you go, submitting your transcripts, submitting your test scores, making sure that you've submitted your amateurism status, whether it be if you're entering college in the fall, you have to start your amateurism in April before you go. If you're going to be entering college in the middle of the year, maybe you're graduating early, you have to start your amateurism the October before you enter. So that in senior year, it's all done, right? You want to make sure that we're progressing along and no worries at the end or no catch up. A few things to look at, and I might have mentioned a few of these just in passing, but we wanted to have a slide just for some of these pointers. First, each semester counts equally, right? And so you want to assure that maybe as you're picking your classes, if you take 4 really, really hard courses for you in one semester and the grades in each of those 4 is just a little bit lower because that semester is really taxing, every semester counts equally. So you want to make sure of that. Summer school and virtual courses are options. Many students across the country take summer school or virtual courses to help their 16 core, to boost their GPA. But what's important to know is those courses must be approved by the NCAA in order to count. And you also, once that 10-7 requirement is met in your senior year, you can't take additional courses to replace those 10-7. And our Honest Game reports actually indicate that, so you don't have to worry about that craziness. We compute it for you. Like I said, pluses and minuses really don't matter. So if you have a B plus or you have a B minus, the NCAA will just call it a B, and that's okay, right? And then the qualifier status, what you have to take a look at is watching how to become a qualifier if you don't meet all those requirements, the 4 English, the 2 math, the social science, or pardon me, the science and English and math, 2 histories and electives, what can happen then is your qualifier status just hits another couple levels, which we'll talk about. That was all NCAA requirements. The NAIA is a little bit different, and they're actually still kind of changing the rules every couple months. Honestly, I feel they keep changing their rules, and so they waived the test score for the longest time, and now they're back to these criteria that you need to meet 2 of the following criteria: an overall GPA, a test score, or a class rank. What they're realizing is that many students, their high schools may not have class rank, or they didn't have an opportunity to take an SAT. And so those rules are actually ever changing. Our software will be changing that. So to account for those rules. So your color on your reports will indicate that. I'm just going to stop. If you can mute your speaker, that way I can, if there's any background noise, I'm just going to make sure people are recording it. Speaker, that would be great. So this is just a map of where NAIA schools are. Obviously, they're regional, right? There are a lot of them in the South. You'll find a little bit on the West Coast, but some students asking, where are the NAIA schools, or where do you find them? They're really, really regional.
You know, back then it was kind of my brother. He was working with me.
Okay. Really quickly to talk about the registering for the Eligibility Center. Everyone must register for the Eligibility Center, whether it be the NCAA Eligibility Center or the NAIA. Each has their own platform, and you'll need to go in and do that. We do not take that off your plate, and so that's important to know that Honest Game does not register you for the eligibility centers. You still need to do that.
So I just have to go do what I love, coach football.
Earlier,
I got my degree, so
and you might get from that.
I just went out to coach it.
Okay, just want to see that there is a new certification account. The NCAA just created a new certification account as of December 1st. And so if you hear about this new account, it's really for domestic student athletes potentially that are going to be changing in older or international. But that will also be an educational blog that we have putting up pretty quickly. So what you need to register with the Eligibility Center, there's a couple things when you sit down to fill out all of the information. What we always say is, listen, spend some time. It's going to take a little bit of time. But also you want to make sure that you're using an email address that is not your school address. When you register with the Eligibility Center, you want to make sure that you're not using your school address, because that's going to stay in the system with the NCAA. And sometimes it will block responses, but also you also want to make sure that when you're in college, you still need to go back to the NCAA portal. You are able to, and maybe your school email is not active anymore once you graduate. So you want to make sure that that's the situation. Also, just your basic education history. When did you start 9th grade? When did you go to school? Which schools did you go to? Did you go to any school other than Legacy? That's really important to know. Your sports participation history. Some student athletes that are playing sports where there's a lot of amateurism questions, they're going to want to know what events you've played in. Did you get any money? You really want to make sure that you have a whole information about where you've played and when, and then payment, right? So that's important to know. If you get a certification account, it's not complete until you've paid. So a college coach, I actually just wrote a blog about this. A college coach cannot put you on their list for the NCAA to look at until you've had a paid certification account. So you kind of sit in the ether until that happens. And so that's important to know. You actually don't have an account that a college coach can utilize until it's a paid certification account. We always say definitely make a plan, right? That's why Honest Game is here. Super excited that Legacy has chosen to work with us, because we want to make sure that we are offering many, many resources for you, right? We have a chat bot. You can ask Cleo, that's her name. You can ask her questions if you go to honestgame.com. We push out much education. Follow us on social media. We have such good education out there on our social media platforms. And you also want to get to know the Eligibility Center resources. There's many resources for students and families that you can get free of charge. Also, you want to understand if there's some special circumstances, right? Maybe if you're thinking about reclassifying, or maybe if you took a semester off, or maybe if you have a learning disability or some sort of learning need that the NCAA is going to need to know about, you don't want to wait till the very end. Communicate with your counselors, communicate with your athletic director, make sure that that's talked about earlier, than when it's time to go to college. This is a quote that, from one of our partners, and I just think it's so key because it's what I lived on the college campus for over 20 years. College coaches would come into my office and say, Courtney, I want to fly to this state to go recruit this student athlete, or I have this stack of transcripts about who I want to recruit. And my first question all the time is, are they an academic qualifier? Because we're not going to waste money for you flying to wherever to see a student athlete who cannot play for you. And if they have a large stack of student athletes who they don't know the qualifier status for, if any of them had walked in and said, I want to recruit these students and here's an honest game report, I would 100% back that college coach to go and fly, do a home visit, engage with that recruit. So that's really important to know. I think academic eligibility opens doors for recruiting, and that's really important to know. Other pieces that you should just be aware of, again, it's totally the hot topic of every day now is the NIL, name, image, and likeness. There's a lot of change in the NCAA, and there's a lot of rules out there. Each state has their own rules. Some conferences have their own rules. There are now companies that are pushing out NIL experiences for high school students. So you want to make sure that you understand any of those. Don't go into any agreements with companies, or don't take any money until you have made sure that that's okay, because definitely it can cost you eligibility moving forward. The other piece is to get ready to talk about academics. A college coach, as they're recruiting student athletes, want to know how you're doing. And in an answer, I'm doing well in school, it's fine. That's not enough. Be ready to leverage your academics. When the coach calls you or they're in your DMs and you're chatting, drop, and Honest Game told me that I'm a qualifier. That is magic to their ears. Or if you're a partial qualifier, and you can say, I know I'm a partial qualifier right now, or I'm an academic record, but I know I'm going to take a summer school. I'm going to end up being able to be a qualifier. You really leverage your academics. It can definitely make a difference. We have a QR code here if you want to take a look at it. You want to make sure that you understand the recruiting calendar also. The dates are all over the map. Each sport has their own recruiting calendar. Each sport has their own recruiting rules. And so there's terms like dead period or quiet period or evaluation period. I wrote a blog on that. You can take a look on our website that goes through all of that, but that's really important to know because you might be like, oh, no one's calling me. No one's coming to my games. What's going on? It could be a dead period. They can't talk to you at that time. So you want to make sure that you know the recruiting calendar. A little bit about the misperception or misconceptions about the recruiting process. You hear Division I or bust all the time. And if I had a nickel for every time, and I said, look at all of the NBA players, the Major League Baseball, NFL players who didn't play D1, and they're doing a great job right now, right? Look at all the people that had extremely awesome, successful championship seasons at Division II, Division III, and NAIA and JUCO, right? There's a lot of options out there. One misconception too is if you receive an email from a coach, you must be getting recruited. In many sports, that's not the case. They're sending out mass emails to thousands of students across the country. And so what you should do is act on it. Getting an email, you might be one of 1,000. However, did you respond? Did you attach your academic report from Honest Game? Did you attach a clip of your stats or your playing or whatever? Make sure that you're engaging in that, right? Another misconception is college coaches don't want to hear from prospective athletes. They would love to hear from you. They would love to have students reaching out and kind of being on the offensive and jumping into their email. That's a really awesome way to get in front of them, right? Some people think academics don't matter. I'm really good. I don't need to be eligible. Yes, you do. And we talked about that earlier. If I'm good enough, the college coaches will find me. Many coaches always say, like, if this person was a diamond in the rough, they're constantly looking at talent, and they may not find you. You want to make sure that you're finding them as well. And then some people say, oh, well, I'm not going to really start thinking about, my recruiting process until, my junior year. No, the minute you enter high school, you should be thinking about the recruiting process, because the recruiting process involves so much, right? Your academics, what your teachers will say about you, what your counselors will say about you, what the athletic director says about you, how you're doing in school, your playing time, all sorts of things comes into the recruiting process. So you want to make sure that you're definitely thinking about that first. One thing, as it talked about the recruiting periods, is that coaches can talk to you based on many things, right? So if you are a sophomore, there's different rules than if you're a senior. If you play baseball, there's different rules than if you play football. The coach that's talking to you, Division I has different recruiting rules than Division II. NAIA have different recruiting rules than JUCO, right? So you want to understand that, and also what day, what month, where are you? As these dead periods, these evaluation periods, that's determining the activity of the coach. And you want to make sure that you remember that. And you can take a look at our blogs for that too. The calendar matters definitely. And so there's a lot of things about how coaches can interact and engage with you. It could be sending recruiting materials. It could be calling you. It could be coming into your home for a home visit. It could be meeting you at the school. It could be watching you at a game. Those are all ways that coaches will find you and look for you. And so, and engage with you, right? And so you need to be ready for all of those pieces. I think the important part is that whenever you have contact with a college coach, it could be your only one. It could be your last one. So be ready, right? We actually talk a lot about that in our virtual counseling. We kind of prep students about that recruiting pieces. These are the questions they're going to ask you. Are you ready? Right? Do you have answers ready to go? But also, what are you going to ask them? Recruiting is a two-way street. And so they are recruiting you, but you should also be recruiting them. Is that the best fit for me? Is that the best fit for my family? You know, there's a lot to think about in the recruiting piece. In Division III, it's a little bit different. And we wanted to make sure that we talk about this because, as I said, there are so many opportunities in Division III to play sports. Coaches can contact and interact with students at no restriction. So there are no rules in the Division III recruiting. Coaches can speak to students at any time. Official visits can begin during that junior year in January. And so you want to make sure that you know, as you're engaging with coaches and you're talking, what division are they in, that you're following the rules, but also you might get recruited a little bit by Division III coaches, and there's really no restrictions. They can have much more robust conversations with you. NAIA is a little bit kind of in between. The NAIA really wants to make sure that the coaches are having good relationships with those student athletes. So there's really no recruiting calendar restrictions. You can freely communicate with the NAIA coaches. There's direct interaction, but there's a lot more.
It's like supposed to be a
kind of, I don't want to say
NCAA,
like, you
like
know,
if your
kind
kids
of a little bit crazy, but
possibly
there's a
play
lot
in
of
college.
conversation going on.
But they just messaged me.
The recruiting at the 2-year and junior colleges is important too, because some students think, oh, well, junior colleges can't recruit me. I'm just gonna, you know, maybe go and attend a junior college and have my experience there. But that's definitely not the case. They can recruit. They can offer gifts or inducements, but you can have visits up to 2 days and 2 nights. Their timing is a little bit different. We specifically focused on the junior colleges that are in the NCAA. But if you're looking to go to junior college in California, they have their own junior college set of the 3C2A, CCCAA, which has a whole nother set of rules. And so there's a lot out there that are options. We have another QR code for you here. We have created this checklist for college-bound student athletes. You know, I would definitely suggest you can also download it from our website, print this off. You know, administrators, you can put it in your office. Student athletes, you should put it in your locker. You should put it in your mirror at home. You should put it in your wallet, whatever. But we really want to, as I said, start in 9th grade. Start in 9th grade, thinking about this, checking off these boxes, walking through, and making sure that you're all set. These are some snapshots. So if you've gone into the Honest Game platform, you've seen it. But this is how we tell you how you're doing academically in terms of the NCAA, NAIA, and junior college academic requirements, right? So here's just an example, Serena up on top. And we use a very basic color coding system, red, yellow, green. And so if you can see here, remember there's 5 options to play in college. So she is ineligible at Division I, that's red. She's ineligible at NAIA, that's red. But she's eligible to receive a scholarship, to play, to be on the roster at Division II, Division III, and JUCO. And so each one there has their own tab. So if you're logging in as a student or a parent or an administrator, you can actually see, you can toggle in between each one of those tabs and see the different requirements, right? This is a huge button here. Download your CARE report, your college athletic report on eligibility so that you can give it to a college coach that's recruiting you. You can have it at the ready. We made that hopefully very easy for you there. And this is right here what we're talking about, that NCAA core course GPA, test scores if they're needed. And then how are you progressing towards those 32 semesters or 16 core courses? How are you doing over here? If you're more of a graphics kind of person, we also put it here. So as you can see here, this person had 7 of 8 semesters of English completed, still missing 1. Math is done, natural sciences are done, social sciences are done. Electives, we're missing 2. We only have 2 out of 8, so we're missing 6 semesters or 3 classes right there. And we finished those additional. In your portal as a student athlete, this is actually interactive. So you can drag the SAT and see, okay, if this is my core GPA, how high of an SAT do I have to get? And you can kind of play with that. So we made that a little bit fun for you. That is Honest Game and us in a nutshell. I'm sure there's going to be questions, and I want to make sure that I open it up and I leave enough time for that. But we're just super excited to be able to share Honest Game with you and really come on board with Legacy. It's been a pleasure to work with the administrators there so far. And I'm just so happy that we got reports out to all of you. And definitely I will stop talking now and I will open it up for questions. You can either type in the chat or you can just unmute yourself. What I'll do just really quickly, can you please put the link? Okay, so I'm going to, as I said before, if some of you came on late, this is being recorded. And so Legacy will have this recording. We'll find out an easy way to get it to you all if you could jump down in the middle and to make sure that you can see, you can watch the whole thing. Any other questions that I can answer?
Hello, good night. Will we be notified through the band app on how to rewatch this video or a link to get the materials of what you went over for tonight?
Absolutely. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you kindly.
One piece that we didn't spend a lot of time on, but I'll be very honest, I spend a lot of time on it in my seat because I get calls and emails all day, is about reclassifying. So I just want to talk a little bit about it. Again, I keep going to the blogs, but we have an awesome reclassifying blog because it's common. So what reclassifying is that you are going to enter college in a different year that your peers are going to who started 9th grade with you. So if you think about it, it could be repeating a grade. So if you go to 9th grade and then 10th grade and then you repeat 10th grade again, the NCAA only wants to know, when did you start 9th grade? And so that's really important to know. So if someone says, oh no, I'm reclassing, I'm not graduating until 2026. So, okay, that's well and good. However, the NCAA wants to look at, if you had graduated with your class, did you meet the requirements? And so in order to reclassify and go and play in college at the Division I level specifically, they will hold you to the requirements that your peers are. So you still need to meet the 10-7. So the first 3 years in high school, maybe it was for you 9th grade, 10th grade, and your second 10th grade, you have to meet the 10-7 requirement after the first 3 years of high school. Additionally, after the first 4 years of your high school, even though you're going to high school for 5 if you're reclassing, but in the first 4 years, you have to have met the requirements as if you would have gone to college at that time. And so our report, if you are reclassifying, it actually will pop a different message for you. It'll include those courses in your 5th year, and you'll have different messaging for that because that's really, really nuanced. And if you're thinking about reclassifying, it's for some people, right? It's not for everybody. But reclassifying might be good for some people. Maybe you get more opportunity to be looked at in terms of the recruiting piece. Maybe just educationally, it's a better option for you, right? But you want to make sure that you're meeting those requirements. And we have some really good resources about that on our website. Any other questions I can answer if you want to type them in, or if you can just take yourself off mute and ask. Okay. Well, what I will do, I will stop the, oops, sorry, we got one. Okay, how often should you review your on-scam account? Oh my gosh, such a great question. Such a great question. You should review your on-scam report daily. No, I'm kidding. What we do is every time Legacy gives us a new set of data, every student will and their parent, if they're in there in the portal, will get an email that there's a new report. So every time we get your classes for the semester, you'll get a new report. Every time we get your grades from that term, you'll get a new report. And so ideally, you'll be getting 3 to 4 reports this year, right? You got the first set this week, but once these grades come in, we'll get a new set and you'll get a new report. Once we get your spring classes, you'll get a new set, you'll get a new report. Once the spring class grades come in, you'll get a new report. We also like to tell our counselors on the call, if it helps you at all, because we really feel it does, you can use it as an advising tool. Because if we have in progress classes and suggested courses for the following term, you'll have a report. So I don't, we didn't talk granular about how early registration is, but we will do a new report for each school that we're working with whenever we get new data. So ideally that's when you're checking. And I think too, from my perspective, again, I oversaw the academics of 450 college athletes. I also say use it kind of as a motivator and a level set, right? Maybe, you're home, you're doing your homework, you have a test this week and you need a little bit of more motivation. Look at your honest game report. We give projected grades. So we'll say, listen, if you can get 3 C's this semester or 2 B's and an A, this is what your GPA will be, right? This is what you can show colleges. So that's important I think to look at, often, not just, once a semester or twice a semester. You can really use it I can do this. Like I can do this. Look at what I can do. And I think that's important to be able to use that as well. This is a question. If a student wants to reclass, should they do it 8th grade or wait until high school? Oof, that's a loaded question. I'm still recording. The NCAA will ask you, when did you start 9th grade? And so if you repeated 8th grade, they will never know. They will go on and see you started 9th grade in a certain year. So you'll see many reclassed students, quote unquote, reclassed before they enter 9th grade. And so that's really when, I don't want to say the majority, but many reclass situations happen by repeating a middle school year. So they're entering 9th grade already having that done. And then their high school experience is really 4 years, 9, 10, 11, 12. But they're just older before they got to 9th grade. I hope that answers your question, Coach. Could you give me some kind of a minute? Okay, so if you are a coach out there, I think I'm understanding this correctly. Each school can decide who has access to the reports. And so, after this meeting, we can talk offline about the administrators in the school having access to the reports, because we want to make sure, as I said, everybody's in their village, everybody's in the student athletes village. And so if a coach will be a helpful person in that decision-making or in that education situation, we want to make sure. If a student wants to have someone else have access to their report, we have what's called a connections tab. And the student can add anyone into their portal that they would like to have see it through a login password. So many of our students do that, where they obviously the administrators at the school have access because that's who bought it. The high school bought the Honest Game platform. However, they're like, "Ooh, I'm being recruited by a coach in Iowa. I want to add them as a connection." That can happen for free. As we want to make sure that everyone in that student's village has access to the academic information that is truthful and factful. And so if the coach that we're speaking about in this question, it works at the school, that would be a conversation with the school. But if this coach is outside of the school, the student can add that coach as a connection free of charge, no additional cost.
Thanks, Courtney. There was also one question. Is there an app for the Honest Game?
Yes, so we are mobile friendly. So you can view your report on your phone, but we do not have an app in the App Store yet. Stay tuned because that should be rolling out. But if you just go to honestgame.com, you can see everything on your phone very easy. The majority of our anything that we do on our website is mobile friendly.
Thank you.
Oh, another question that's just spectacular, and I apologize that I didn't make this more clear when we talked about test scores. So while test scores are not required to be a qualifier for the NCAA at this moment in time, many colleges still say, no, we need an SAT or an ACT. Some colleges who've gone test optional, and there's so many different buzzwords about this, but some colleges who have gone test optional do not need a test score to get admitted, but to major in certain majors, you need to have a test score. And so it's very nuanced. It's dependent to each school. And so, you know, back in the day when the NCAA required a test score, you just knew everyone would have one. And now you're going to have these students that don't have a test, that do have a test, that didn't have access to a test. Like, let's just think about, you know, a couple of years ago when that was not a thing. And so we always tell student athletes, if you have an opportunity to take a test, it would be a good idea to do so, because you're not, you know, really not sure where you're going to apply or the major that you're going to have at that school. And so if you have access to a test, that would be great. You don't have to submit it to the NCAA if you're in these years where you don't need one, but at least you'll have one in case you do for college applications. Okay. This is another great question. Is there a what if option for students to see, you know, if I have a C, how will that affect my GPA? So we have a what if situation in the honest game report as it is, if you've given us your in progress grade. And so if you are in let's just say that right now a student is in 7 courses and 4 of them are NCAA approved. Our software computes in those 4 that count for the NCAA because they're on Legacy's course list. If you get 4 A's, if you get 4 B's, if you get 4 C's, what will your NCAA core course GPA be? That's already built into the software. If you give us the next semester's classes, it will also compute any other planned classes. So we don't have it right now, but stay tuned. At the granular level, if I get an A in this class, a B in this class, a C in this class, and an A, how will I do? But on average, that's already in each report. Any other questions at all? Or any other points that you want me to bring up? Okay, so what I will do, I'm just going to stop the recording. Go here.